Good evening, everyone, and welcome to February's segment of Family Law Uncorked. I am joined today by attorney Sarah Hink here at the firm, and I am Jen Bordeaux, the Director of Public Relations. So first off, I want to say Happy Galentine's Day.
Happy Galentine's to you.
Thank you. It is February 13th, which is also known as Galentine's Day, so happy Galentine's Day to all you lovely ladies out there as well. In addition to Galentine's Day in our field, it is also known as Mistress Day, February 13th, which brings a little bit of a dark spin to February 13th, but it's a reality. And so what that means is that if there's infidelity involved in a relationship, more often than not, the activity associated with that will be on February 13th and not actually on Valentine's Day. So we thought that we would discuss that's very much a reality in the field that we work in, and so we wanted to discuss infidelity a little bit and legally how that can affect you and how maybe your emotional reaction might be telling you to do one thing, but maybe legally it's not the best course of action. So
sometimes it might be. Who knows?
That's true. That's what we're going to talk about. So we welcome your questions. Feel free to rapid fire here while you're watching. So we'll just dive right into it. So we'll start with Sarah. What if you are suspecting that a spouse is cheating? Maybe you haven't caught them in the act yet, but you're kind of thinking it might be going on. What can you do? What should you do? Should you gather info? Should you confront them right away if it's happening? You think it's happening?
Well, and that's a case-by-case, situation of what to do and how much information you actually have. If you suspect your spouse is cheating, then you might be the time to speak to an attorney, and if you don't have a lot of hard evidence, say you haven't hired a private investigator yet, you don't have him admitting or she admitting that she's done it, then you might want to hold off on bringing that to the attention of your spouse if you can, because I know it's hard. You definitely want to have that talk and speak to an attorney and see if the evidence you have is good enough to prove that an affair happened, or if maybe you do need to hire a private investigator to gather more evidence of the affair. And it's not like you have to have video of him or she having sex with another person outside your marriage. There are other ways to prove it, such as they are seen going into a hotel room together, or they're seen kissing outside of a restaurant. These sort of things can help you prove that an affair happened during the marriage.
So does the court just see that as an assumption that's what's happening and spending that time together?
Yeah,
okay.
So it's like an inclination, and you have the situation where it could occur. So you have like a love letter, and then you have them going to a restaurant together. You can connect the two, and the court can say, okay, well, I believe there was an affair.
Yeah.
And it also is important during this time to speak to a mental health counselor, because it does cause a lot of emotions. And usually when someone is having an affair, it's at their highest level of narcissism. So they might, if you try to speak to them about it, they might say, no, you're crazy.
Right.
You're the one that's having these false ideas.
Blame me for something I'm not doing.
Blame you, and then you're like, okay, well, now I don't want to say anything because they're just going to make me feel bad, and maybe I am crazy, or maybe I am being jealous or overprotective. But it's good to have a source, your own individual counselor or an attorney to speak with that's outside of your relationship, to kind of validate the concerns that you have, and for us to say, okay, well, I've seen it happen in a lot of cases. I kind of know what the signs look like.
Right. And there's all kinds of stuff, if you're out there searching. I mean, I've seen it come across of, signs that he or she might be cheating and everything. But, like you said, every situation is very unique. So try not to jump to immediate conclusions, and having some of that information and talking to the professionals that are out there to help support you.
And don't react violently.
Oh.
Even though, your emotions are high, don't go out there and run over the spouse. My gosh, we get crazy stories like that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's not smart. That'll cause you more trouble than you'd like to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then moving on, let's say that you have found out that he or she has been having an affair. Now what? Is it okay to go ahead and kick him to the curb and say, get out of my life and not let him back in the house? Or should you run off and drain all the bank accounts? Or what should you do in that instance?
Well, don't drain all the bank account, but if you're the one leaving the house, then speak to an attorney. It might be okay for you to take certain funds from your shared joint accounts. And usually you don't want to take more than 50% of that, but definitely speak to an attorney about what's best for your case, because the next move is more so financial, making sure that you're financially secure in what's happening. If you find out about an affair and you say, okay, well, let's work it out, Know that if you guys remain in that relationship for a while, like a year, and you are acting as if nothing happened on the outside, and then you decide to separate later, that the spouse could go back and say, okay, well, they forgave me. So that is actually a defense to anything in court where the infidelity might be used against that person. So you really want to think that through and make sure you speak to an attorney, even if you do decide that you're going to work it out, to know what ramifications that might have for you in the long run if you do end up separating a year or two down the future.
Right. Now, and you mentioned, we were addressing the last question about, gathering information and intel, we'll say.
Yeah.
So if you decide to bring this up to your spouse, if you are suspecting, you feel like you have enough and you want to talk to them, and we'll confront them about it in a calm manner, and you wanted to record the conversation, can you do that? Is that legal? If you can record the conversation?
Definitely record the conversation. And the best is to, if you have a phone, just put it on the recording app. Usually I have an iPhone, so it just comes with a phone, and you can kind of just put it down on the table or somewhere inconspicuous, because you do not need to tell that person that you're recording. It's a one-party consent state in North Carolina, so only one party in the conversation has to consent to the recording. So as long as you're the one doing the recording and you're in the conversation, you're not wiretapping and not in the room or something like that, then it's perfectly legal, and I would advise that you do that just to have it on record, because guess what? He's lied to you about this before. He'll lie in court too. Or she. I mean,
it happens on both sides. So we do have a couple of questions. So thank you for those of you that are tuning in. And one of the ones we have here is, what if the person has had multiple affairs in the past, but you can't prove it? And the person that's writing in said, I left because of domestic violence, but he had multiple affairs in the past during our marriage. Can I bring it up to my attorney about the multiple affairs, even if I don't have proof of it?
Yes, you should definitely bring it up to your attorney. You should definitely speak about any concerns you have, and the attorney can kind of help you navigate what happened and help you reflect on things that you might have forgotten that happened during that time period. And it can be used in a lot of other respects. It can show some pattern of his behavior. And if there's any relationship post-data separation that happened very recent to the separation, you can actually use that to corroborate anything that happened during the marriage. And there might be ways to actually get more proof than you think. So talk to your attorney. There's always ways you can find out forensically if there are text messages. You can issue subpoenas. There's all these sorts of discovery that you can issue as well to find out more information that they're trying to withhold from you.
And definitely speaking to the violent part of the relationship, make sure always, safety is first. So there are definitely resources out there, and your attorney should be able to point you in the right direction for some of those, and you can find all kinds of great resources locally and in your own communities as to what those are for you.
Right.
So make sure you're definitely staying safe, and there are options to help you get out of an unsafe situation. So again, thank you guys for those questions and comments. Speaking to the evidence, we had someone write in and ask a question prior to the video of what if they did have evidence of it, but maybe the spouse found out and destroyed the evidence or took it away. Is there any sort of way to try to get that back, or?
Yeah, well, it depends on what kind of evidence it is. If it was a piece of paper and they burned it, no.
Right.
But if it's something on their phone or their computer, there are ways to forensically go back and look at that. And we would have to, at that time, refer you to and work closely with someone that does that. And it wouldn't be me, because I'm not capable of performing those technological advanced situations, but we do have referral partners that we refer to, and I'm sure your attorney might have someone to speak with too about having that phone scanned. There's motions we can file to have a court order that if that person's not going to comply with that. So there are ways to go back and look at any kind of evidence that might be electronically stored.
And and that might be a good idea for maybe next month or whatever we can work out for another Facebook Live, is to have a digital forensic person up here to address those questions.
Much further than there's ways to ask the court to order it, and there's a lot of times where attorneys will know that this exists, and they'll just say, okay, well, it's probably a good idea for you to go ahead and consent to turning your phone over. Yeah. Because they're going to find it anyways.
And we also, in a prior Facebook Live, it's been several months ago though, but you can go back to our Facebook and look at the other videos, and there is one that we did with a private investigator that he talked about how he works in family law cases what he can and cannot do, and kind of limitations, but also a lot of the information that they can gather and what they do.
Even if your spouse confirms that they're having an affair to you verbally, it's still a good idea sometimes to have backup evidence from a private investigator, because it's a lot of leverage. If you're negotiating a settlement and you have video of your spouse cheating on you, say it's with a coworker, something that could affect him outside of just the relationship, I mean, it's the reality of it, and ultimately they've made a decision, and it's our job to protect you and make sure that you're financially stable and getting everything that you deserve out of this situation.
We have another great question. I'm glad they wrote this in. It says, if the woman that my spouse cheated on me with, admitted it by letter or by text, that they were with my husband, is it accountable in court?
Yes.
Or can it be introduced in court?
Yes, and you would have to subpoena that third party to be there, because otherwise it'd just be hearsay unless you have that person present in court to testify to it. But there's ways to subpoena and have someone appear in court so you can question them about a text message.
Okay. Thanks for these questions, guys. These are great. So we'll move on to the next question that I had here, because we get this a lot of times, I feel like. Does infidelity affect, so under the family law umbrella, you've got some of your main claims, equitable distribution, child custody, child support, and spousal support, or alimony. Does infidelity affect, and I know a lot of times the answer is it depends, but does infidelity affect those main parts of the separation process?
The main part, so different claims you're going to face is if you have children, custody, and child support. And if you don't have children, you're going to look at equitable distribution, which is a division of assets, and then possibly spousal support. So spousal support is the main one that is affected by infidelity. We have the two parties in the case, so you classify one as the supporting spouse. That's the spouse that makes most of the income in the family, and they are the ones that are supporting, per se, the dependent spouse. And so the dependent spouse does not make nearly as much as the supporting spouse. And how it affects it is if the supporting spouse is if he's found to have, or she's found to be cheating during the marriage, then that can be used against them, and it says in the statute that they shall pay spousal support. The dependent spouse is found having an affair, then they're barred from receiving spousal support. So that's the big issue. Equitable distribution is not affected by marital misconduct, and there are other marital misconducts besides infidelity, and those all go towards the alimony, spousal support. Child support is not affected by marital misconduct, and custody is not affected at this level as far as cheating, unless that is occurring around the children, so it's the best interest of the children.
Right.
So if they're witnessing and they're one of their parents having an affair, that's obviously not in their best interest to witness this relationship in front of them continue, knowing that their mom or their dad is still in the picture. So that's the big one where you need to speak to your attorney and see if it actually affects it, because a lot of times it doesn't if the children are not aware to it, and this person, third party, if they meet the children, is not someone awful like a drug abuser or something like that. So it really just comes down to mostly the spousal support issue.
Okay. And I think that might be what we get, because I think, infidelity can be so hurtful, and a lot of times you feel like they don't deserve to be around the kids. Or you may feel like, or people that are going through that may feel like they don't deserve to be around the kids, but it's my understanding that it's really, the courts want both parents, if they're both fit, to be involved in the kids' lives.
Terrible spouse, but okay parent.
Right.
That's what we hope for. And of course it's hard because you see your spouse do this and make this decision, and it might ultimately tear the family apart, and that's really hard to live with for a while and understand this, and you're going to have a lot of anger and resentment towards your spouse, and it is going to make it harder to co-parent, and that's a very unfortunate side effect of this, other than just your own emotional needs during this time period. It does make the co-parenting harder in a lot of situations, so that's a time where you're going to have to work through that, usually with a mental health counselor to some degree. Sometimes you bring in co-parenting specialists and people who can help you do that too, to make sure that your anger towards your spouse does not get in the way of parenting your children. So it definitely affects the custody in that respect, but in court, no, you won't gain custody because your spouse cheated simply for that very fact.
Right. So we do have kind of a jurisdictional question, as who would have jurisdiction. So just while it's up here, the person that is writing in is in North Carolina, but their spouse is in South Carolina, and they've filed in South Carolina. So they're wondering if South Carolina does have jurisdiction over the matter.
They filed in South Carolina?
The opposing party did.
Well, to have jurisdiction, I can't speak to the jurisdiction laws of South Carolina because I'm only licensed to practice in North Carolina. I have no idea. But in North Carolina, a person needs to live here for 6 months to establish residency and jurisdiction as far as the court is concerned. That's I would have to know a lot more information about that situation to give you a firm answer to your question. I apologize, but definitely something to bring to your attorney's attention and bring to an attorney in whatever they filed, whatever pleading they filed, and the facts alleged there, because certain claims would be more proper, maybe here, I'm not certain. But jurisdiction is a big issue that you would need to have an attorney look at.
And the second part of that question is what do you do if you have tried everything to find an attorney to no avail? I would say from our perspective, there's a lot of research that you can do online and finding an attorney, and hopefully you can call into that office and kind of get a good feel when you talk to the person who's answering the phone. That is the hope. It doesn't always happen. Additionally, most states, I'm not going to say all, but I know North Carolina definitely does, and several other states that I've helped people that have called in find resources. They have a lawyer referral service for the county that the matter would be in. So that might also be a resource, is looking up the local counties or the state's lawyer referral service and giving them a call.
And ask people you know.
Yeah.
More people than you would think have had this experience in their life or know someone that's gone through a divorce, separation, and custody issues. So
there's groups on Facebook for local communities for moms or just people in the community, and people are asking for recommendations, and people ask for recommendations for all kinds of different attorneys, not just family law, but definitely family law as well. So that might be another resource for you. Okay, so we'll get down to our last couple of questions here that I have for you. What is alienation of affection?
That is we're one of the few states that still have it. I think there's about 5 or 6 total now left. And basically it's alienation of affection and then criminal conversations. So criminal conversations, basically there's sexual intercourse with someone who has a valid marriage at the time. So that's very simple. Did they have sex and were they married? And then this third party who had sex with your spouse, you could sue them for that. Alienation of affection, there's 3 elements to that, and basically the first one is you have to prove that love existed in the marriage. So this was a happy couple. You don't have to prove that, they had a couple fights. That's not going to do it. It has to be that they were happy. Yeah, fights happen. If the couple is found to not been happy, were estranged, didn't really talk, never lived in the same room for the past few years, not a happy couple. So you have to prove that love existed, that love was alienated and destroyed by a third party, and that this third party maliciously did so. Their conduct is what actually alienated that love and affection. So people think that it has to be a third party paramour, but there's actually been cases of a mother-in-law being sued for alienation of affection. There's nothing sexual in the actual elements. It just happens that most of the time it's going to be someone's mistress, or I don't know, you can't really call them a mister, but
the male equivalent of the mistress.
And that kind of goes back to this law, which was actually before, like way back in the day, it was just men could sue for it. Because it was back when women were seen as property. So if a man took your woman, they took your property, and that man should pay for that property. So that's why a lot of states don't have it anymore, is they found it unconstitutional and
a little outdated.
Yes, based on those misogynistic platforms back in the day, but North Carolina still has it.
Still home strong and steady.
And they still file for it all the time. I get a lot of questions about it and whether or not a person should pursue this action, whether they should not. I definitely think that you should put someone on notice if you find out that this is happening. You know who the paramour is. You should send them a letter stating not to destroy evidence, spoliation letter is what we call it, and kind of give yourself time to think about whether you want to pursue that action. There's a 3-year statute of limitations on it, so you do need to file something within that 3-year period. But put them on notice, do everything to preserve that claim, and then focus on your family law issues with your spouse first. And then you can collect more evidence, and you should sometimes people include a waiver and separation agreement where you won't sue that third party in exchange for maybe more assets. So that's something you can do as well. But it does happen. I printed this recent article about the Durham case where the husband sued the wife's paramour.
We have a suggestion for the name of that, by the way, a mastress.
A mastress, okay, I like it. It's a good one.
Yeah. It's from someone here in the office.
I saw you see that name.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, so there's plenty of names for that. We can probably spend all day thinking of them. I don't know if I'd...
They normally aren't very positive names, but...
No. But yeah, the recent case out of Durham, which got a lot of national attention, was an $8.8 million award for an alienation and affection case. And no, this guy does not make millions of dollars a year. So that's probably going to be a judgment that the person can't really collect on, but you can tell that it's still alive and well in North Carolina for awards like that, because you can give punitive awards in these cases and pretty much doesn't have to mean anything other than this person should be punished for their actions. So I could debate all day long about whether I think this law should still exist, but it does, and
it's a whole nother Facebook Live.
It is, and you should always discuss that with your attorney about your options and whether or not it's right for you to pursue an alienations of affections or criminal conversation claim in your case.
In your experience with that, with consultations and clients, whenever it has come up, do you feel that it a lot of times does go to court, or it settles outside of court?
It settles out of court. Okay. And I also explained that it is intensive on the front end as far as attorney's fees. There's a lot of discovery. There's a lot of procedural issues because you don't really. It's not as easy to file in the district courts. A lot of times you file in the superior court, and there's different procedures in that court. So you do need to invest a lot in attorneys on the front end. So really make sure you discuss the benefits and costs of pursuing that and making sure it's going to be something worthwhile for you. Or is it better to use a waiver per se and invest maybe in your mental health and moving on from this situation instead? Because it's a long process.
Yeah.
But
all the points.
Yes.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the last question I have for you, unless we have some others that pop up, but let's switch gears a little bit. What if because we represent both parties. We talk to the person that is men, women, the person that maybe has been having the affair, and obviously then the person that has been affected by the affair. So what if you are the cheating spouse? Where do you start? What do you do?
Today, the smart of you, so we'll give you some advice.
Yeah.
I'd first say
stop.
It is smart to stop, okay? And if you're like super in love with this person, that's not your spouse, then the love will still exist when you figure this out, because it would be best for you to stop. Speak to an attorney. Speak to maybe an individual therapist about why this is happening. Are you doing this because whatever reasons, you need to speak to an individual therapist. Also, how is it affecting your family? You might not even see the effects on your family, but they might be happening already. Also, what evidence could your spouse be collecting on you? And maybe they're starting to realize what's happening, and they spoke to an attorney, and little do you know that they're recording you, and you have a private investigator on you. So there are things you should probably do, because it will have a big effect down the road if you get caught cheating. So speak to an attorney, and like I said, stop. Figure out if this is an action you want to pursue, because it is doing something to your relationship. It is slowly destroying it if you're continuing a long-term affair. And if you're doing that, why are you still in your relationship? And what legal ramifications this might have, and if that's worth it. And
in either scenario, it sounds like it's a good idea to find out what your legal rights and options are, because if both parties aren't in agreement to work on things, even if one does want to, then that's probably going to head down the path of separation. Right. And either way, definitely good to know what that path looks like.
A lot of times people end up having affairs with their coworkers, and that can hit you not just at home, but also get you in trouble at work. And that is a big issue for you, because you're going to be paying spousal support and you are going to be paying an attorney, and you're going to have your wife angry at you. You might have your mistress angry at you. She lost her job. Everyone's mad.
Just a bad situation.
Yeah. Do you really want that life? I don't know.
Yeah. Think long and hard.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering these questions. And if you guys have any other questions, you can respond on here and we will answer them to the best of our ability. But definitely, a lot of times what might appear to be a simple question actually has a pretty complex answer. So
Right.
at that time, it really is well worth it to come in for a consultation. They generally last about an hour and you get a lot of information in that consultation.
And every situation is different, so definitely come speak to an attorney, figure out the best plan of action for you and your family, because everyone's finances are different, everyone's families are different. And even if you're not sure if you want to work on it or if you want to leave the marriage after you discover this affair, or if you're the one having the affair, it's best to know your options and what those decisions are going to affect you in the long run, whichever one you choose.
Absolutely. And you're going to get a lot of advice and whenever you're talking and confiding in friends and family if you are going through that. But and that can be very comforting. But like Sarah said, everybody's situation is unique and your circumstances can be very, very different in the slightest of ways. So definitely important to find out what is best for your particular situation. So you can reach us a lot of different ways here on Facebook, through our website, Instagram, Twitter. We're there. So feel free to reach out to us, or you can go old school and give us a call at 919-719-3470. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this evening for this segment of Family Law in Court, and we look forward to reaching you with other videos in the future. Have a good night.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.